Mario Kart 8 recently released its last wave of levels for the Booster Course Pass, and it's safe to say that they delivered on every one of those courses introduced. One of them, Bowser's Castle 3, was a track that I was looking forward to, as prior to it, we only had one Bowser's Castle track in the entire game. Now to give a little backstory here, I had been wanting to recreate a Mario Kart Booster Course track in Mario Maker for a little while now, but I didn't have the time because of factors like school. And if I did have the time, the available tracks wouldn't really stand out, as they were either way too long or not very interesting to recreate. So with that in mind, we come back to the present. I'm playing the Wave 6 Booster Course Pass, and Bowser's Castle 3 is the next track in the cup. And while I'm playing it, I realized something. This track is pretty short, and it also has thwomps, coins, similar looking semi-solids, and lava bubbles. At that moment, I knew what I had to do. I stopped racing, opened Mario Maker 2, pulled up Bowser's Castle 3 on YouTube, and got to work. This is the story of how I recreated Bowser's Castle 3 in Mario Maker 2. Now, if Mario Kart 8 being a racing game, where you have to drive in karts, there was only one real game style I could use.
Super Mario 3D World!
Yeah, you get the idea. If you don't know why, basically, 3D World has an exclusive enemy only in Mario Maker 2, and that is not available in any of the other game styles, the Koopa Troopa Kart. I won't go into the specifics of how it works, but understand that it auto-accelerates and can jump by pressing B, which quickly becomes very important later on. The first step was to set up the beginning of the level. My original idea for that was to create a sort of 3, 2, 1 go section, which wasn't too hard as all I needed was a lava bubble with wings to eventually reach a bob-omb and blow it up, simultaneously activating an on-off switch to open up the gate. If you couldn't tell, that was meant to mimic the way you can't start a track until go shows up on screen. Next up was to have the car actually be present in the starting area. Hooray! Unfortunately, it wasn't as simple as that. An issue quickly rose up where the Koopa would try to run me over until I killed him. And even though it's simple enough to jump on him, I'm a nice guy. And no one should have to go through the extra effort of holding right and pressing a B input. I needed to figure out a way for the car to be automatically vacant without the player interacting with it. Luckily for me, there is a way. It's a simple setup that requires 2 blocks and a bob-omb. So it looks like the starting area was finally, I couldn't remember where the blocks go. I spent 10 minutes placing blocks around the Koopa, hoping it would work. And at one point, I even went onto YouTube and typed in the search bar, how to blow up Koopa Troopa car. But nothing came up. Shocker. So I spent another 10 minutes trying different setups, until eventually, this happened. Now if the starting area truly ready to go, I could move on to the actual level. Now in the track, you start by driving straight for about 2 seconds before making a left turn. That's where I paused. Wait, I'm trying to recreate a 3D track in a 2D level creating game. What the f? So now, I had to figure out how to mimic the sensation of turning in a Mario Kart game. After thinking about it for a while, I decided it was best to go for accuracy. Since you have to make a left turn in Mario Kart, I'll make the player switch direction and go to the left instead of the right. It is possible to turn left with the car, but it takes a while before you get back up to full speed. And on top of that, most players won't realize they need to turn, and will end up taking a not so nice swim in the lava. So I decided to use springs, which has the car turn on its own upon impact and have it lose almost no speed in the process. But this led to another issue. If the car switches direction, it'll simply go back to where it's been before, not to a new area. There was only one real solution to this as far as I'm concerned, the Y-axis. If you can't make the player drive into the level, then I have to make them drive up or below it. So now, turning in the game became 2 things, switching directions and changing the height of the player. Well, in most cases at least. Here was the plan, have the player also gain height when turning. To do that, I put 2 on-off switches next to the spring, and right behind those on-offs, I had thwomps moving horizontally that would activate the on-off switches. But what exactly would activating those blocks do? Well, after some time, I figured I could use on-off trampolines. These are platforms that are directly linked to on-off switches, meaning if a switch is activated, it'll change the current state of the trampoline, going from acting as a simple semi-solid so a platform that can be bounced on. So I placed one next to the on-off blocks, so that when they were activated, the car would be launched into the air less than half a second later. This was a huge step forward because now I knew how turning would work throughout the rest of the level. From that point on, all I had to do was take what I created in the first section and apply it to all the turns in the level. And with that, it was smooth sailing for the rest of it. Or so I thought. As I was watching the video of Bowser's Castle 3, I got to a certain section where the road splits into 3. Now, I had agreed that I would not try to recreate the splitting paths because it would give me a splitting headache. That wasn't the problem. It's what was separating those paths that was an issue. 2 columns, very long and very narrow. I had no clue how I could recreate something like that. I could just use a smooth slope followed by a normal ground, but the problem is that wasn't recreating the goal of the section. You're meant to go up the narrow paths that are also difficult to balance on, and if you succeed, you're rewarded with 2 item boxes. So how exactly was I meant to recreate the idea of balancing on something to be granted a reward? It wasn't until I arrived at the gizmo section that I saw it, the snake block. A block that begins moving to its destination once the player touches it. But what you might not know is that if the player is in a car and drives onto the snake block, it'll still be triggered. Why? I'm not sure, but I'm sure not complaining. Here's the plan. Part 2. Have the player in the car bounce on a blue snake block because they're faster, and if they succeed, reward them with a shortcut because I had no idea of how to give them an item box other than just throwing a mushroom at them. So I got to work. I first created a split path. One goes down and takes you under the columns, while the other takes you up, where I put a 5-block long blue snake block. There's not much to say about the bottom section. I just put a dash block right before a ramp to give the car a large speed boost. As for the snake block section, I had the player try and keep up with the snake block that goes for about 4 to 5 seconds. If done correctly, you're met with 2 dash blocks that will allow you to get enough speed and cut through a section of the level. Failing doesn't mean the end of the world though, you just fall to the bottom path, similarly to how it works in the actual track. I also made sure that if you went down to the bottom path, you couldn't access the shortcut by cheesing it. I did this by having a row of on-off blocks at the shortcut, and if you went down, a thwomp would trigger on-off switches and turn the block solid. Taking the top path would mean the thwomp would never be activated, allowing the player to pass freely. With that whole section completed, I could move on to creating the final section, which presented no issues. I added 2 piranha plants and ended the level with a thwomp that you had to jump off of to reach the goal. At this point, the level was pretty much complete, and all that was left was to add some finishing touches to it. First, I used the 3D World Final Boss Music sound effect and attached it to the card. Originally, I wanted to go with the Super Mario Kart sound effect, but it didn't really sell the mood I was looking for throughout the level. I also added a cheering sound effect at the edge of the ramps, so that if you played more risky and jumped off the ramp later, it would play that sound effect. The same way you get a speed boost when tricking off a ramp if you time your hop. An abbreviated Mario Kart 8 sign was added at the beginning, along with a mushroom. Cause why not? I also wanted to include a couple extra Koopa Troopa cars around the level, and then I realized you could just not use the car for most of the level and hop into one at the end, so I settled for normal Koopas instead, cause they're Koopa Troopa cars, but without the car. No one? Okay. Anyway, I also purposely made the level not very aesthetically pleasing, in order to replicate the more destroyed / abandoned look the castle has in the track. And lastly, a couple spike blocks were put in certain areas to spice up the level a little, and with all of those little extra details added, the level was finally complete. So now, let's see a side-by-side comparison of the Mario Kart version and mine. So what'd you guys think? Pretty good, right? Obviously, my version doesn't look much like the actual Bowser's Castle 3 track, but my aim here was to recreate the goal of the various sections, not so much making a one-to-one recreation of it. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already to help the channel grow. But with that said, until next time, bye!